The Sex Pistols were one of the pioneers of the music, fashion, and attitude of the punk rock movement. They were only together for about 2.5 years and released just one album, but over that period, they were just as famous or infamous for their behavior as they were for their music. They didn't care what you, the music industry, or society thought about them. Led by frontman Johnny Rotten and an illiterate guitar player named Steve Jones, who stole one of his first axes from David Bowie, they took a scorched earth, double middle finger, bugger off attitude towards everything. Over the course of their short career, they were kicked off of 2 record labels, banned from British television, caused dozens of fights, and became the embodiment of punk rock anarchy. Then there's the tragedy of Sid Vicious, who became an icon of the nihilistic live fast, die young attitude up until he died of a heroin overdose while out on bail for allegedly murdering his girlfriend. In this episode of Prisoners of Rock and Roll, we're taking a close look at the Sex Pistols, including the chaotic manager Malcolm McLaren, the fights, the censorship, a Christmas party they threw for working class kids, and that one friggin' amazing album that changed music forever. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Prisoners of Rock and Roll, episode number 47. My name is Bruce Kramer, and I am thrilled to be behind the mic tonight with my very good friend and co-host, the one, the only, Ryan McCusker.
Are you rocking?
Prisoners of Rock and Roll is part of the Pantheon Podcast Network, and we're sponsored by Bold Foot Socks and McCusker's Tavern at 17th and Shunk Streets in Philadelphia. What's going on, brother?
Not a whole lot, bro. Just getting the end of the summer here. Hope the fall is a good one in South Philly. Usually is. All the trees turn great colors, and looking forward to that. What's going on with you?
Yeah, man, I like the fall. I think the fall might be my second favorite season. I hate the transition from summer to fall. We took an extra week off because of Labor Day, and we're back. We're ready to talk about the Sex Pistols, man. This was you will tend to be the one that picks all the choices for the shows. Another great selection, man. And we talked about them a little bit in that episode we did on punk rock.
Punk rock, yeah, that was a great episode.
And that was our first episode we did for Pantheon.
Oh well,
long time ago, man. Like well over a year ago.
Well, it seems like there was a lot more than that.
Yeah.
I love doing the show, so it keeps going, and I keep on going. And
I knew their story a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The sex. I know like the general, the highlights and the high points and stuff. The Sid Vicious and the show on the boat and all that other kind of stuff. But I learned a lot, man. And I did a shit ton of research for this one, man. I watched that whole mini series in like 3 days.
Yeah, I thought it was a little played out, but if you wanted to learn the history of the Sex Pistols, that was it. Like that would be a great introduction to get into the Sex Pistols.
It had a little. They took some creative liberties with a couple things, but
it was cool though how they worked Chrissy Hynde.
Yeah, she's really the one that was in it. I don't think she was in their real lives at that much, but it was cool, and they didn't make a big deal of who she was until the end.
No, yeah, I mean it was just more like she was there. It wasn't like she was there for the beginning of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was cool that like they had characters in there that they didn't tell you who they were. Like you saw Billy Idol in the background a couple times, but they didn't make a big deal like, oh, that's Billy Idol. Or I think they only called Susie Sue like once. They called her name.
Yeah,
they didn't make a big deal like that's Susie from Susie and the Banshees and all that other kind of shit.
Yeah, I think one of them was supposed to be Shane MacGowan from the Pogues.
Oh, really?
Shane was the original president of the Sex Pistols fan club.
Really?
Yeah, you see him. He has like this jacket on with the Union Jack all colored into it. And,
oh wow!
Yeah.
See, I totally missed.
He's
that.
really young. He's really young.
It was also interesting too, man, how much the characters in that show looked like the original people. Like going back, after I watched that, I went and watched the Filth and Fury, the documentary about the Sex Pistols, and I was surprised, man, at how much some of those people, like the girl that works in the boutique that had like the weird eye makeup and walks around like kind of topless and everything. I was like, holy shit, man! Or the little person that worked in the store, like hung out with them, like looked exactly like them.
For punk rock, is definitely have a definition of being different. So everything is shock value, not shock value for what like Marilyn Manson does or Alice Cooper, but shock value on we're so obscene, you're going to be grossed out by us.
Yeah, but I didn't get the sense that they were like trying to like be revolting for the sake of being revolting, not like some of the shock guys, like that they just literally just didn't give a shit.
They seriously didn't. I mean, they were like just surprised that people wanted to listen to them. Like, like they got a record deal fast. Like they were playing the clubs and EMI signed them first, right?
Yeah. And that was kind of, I mean, when I put my notes together, I kind of put it together like how they started, and then the story is like that they got, they were on like 3 record labels in like 2 years. They got kicked off of 2 of them very quickly.
Yeah, who the hell wants to be responsible for those dopey motherfuckers?
Right.
I mean, most of them are junkies.
Yeah.
And
why don't we start like at the beginning, man? I mean, we touched up on this a little bit in the punk rock episode. You can go back to listen to that. We talked about 15 bands in that show, so we didn't have the time to dive into it. But I learned a lot about Malcolm McLaren doing this research. Like I knew who he was, but I never knew the extent of this story. And he's really like. He looked at the Sex Pistols like an art project, like that. It was in that Filth and the Fury thing that he's like, I work with people the way other artists work with like clay.
Yeah, I see him as putting a boy band together. Yes. That's what it looked like to me. He had an idea, and he's like, if I can take what the art is going on in the late 70s in London and put it to music, it would be totally something different.
Yeah.
Malcolm was a genius dude. Originally he had a store. Was it called Sex?
Yeah, it was a store that did a couple different things. It was called like Let It Rock, and then they changed their name to Too Fast for Love, or Too Fast for Love, Too Young to Die, and then eventually just changed it to Sex. And they when it became the name is Sex, big bold capital letters, started selling like ripped clothing, bondage clothes. And then, I guess a lot of the shit that you like associate with the punk rock movement was like clothing that this dude they sold in this store.
I would like to say punk rock's all about the music, but it's not. It's about what you look like. It's, the more freakish you look, the better, more punk rock you are. That's what the Sex Pistols were.
Yeah.
They invented that whole bobby pin through the nose. Gross out, spitting on the crowd.
Yep.
They were,
Yeah. So this dude ran this shop, and it's like, he somehow like he was over in New York or something for like a trade show, and he ran into Sylvian from the New York Dolls because he was doing his own kind of clothing shit, and he convinced him to be like, hey, he wanted to be the manager of the New York Dolls.
Okay. Yeah. And, was Malcolm?
Yeah, Malcolm McLaren did.
Was he for the New York Dolls?
Yeah, excuse me. So he was the one who convinced the New York Dolls to stop dressing in drag and start wearing all the red leather with the hammer and sickle flags.
And that's when they went downhill.
And they basically broke up. It ended their career because they were like, we can tolerate you being drag or being this and being you can't be a communist, man. And
Malcolm, he was really into that. I don't know what his whole bag was with Germany. And like even using a Nazi sign on art and clothing, he wanted to get a reaction out of you.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, there's no symbol more provocative, right? Like in a bad way. I mean, you see it and you're, just holy shit. What's that guy wearing that for?
Yeah. I know it seems like kind of overdone. Yeah. Now, like you go down South Street, all those, Zipperhead back in the day had all those clothes. For this store that Malcolm had, but Sex was the first one to start having all this stuff. But they didn't want have an S&M feel. Right. It was they wanted to look more colorful, more obscene.
Yeah, more like not shit you wear behind closed doors. It was like shit you wear, like they wanted you to wear it. You know, you're not picking up something to be naughty with your lady friend after their hours. Excuse me. It was stuff that you had to wear out in public.
Yeah. Did you see in the they do it in the Filth and the Fury also, but when they had the girl that worked at the sex store in the TV show, and she took the train with a raincoat on, see-through, and like with nothing on underneath it.
Yeah.
I mean, and she walked to work like that, you know, and that's what really happened. That was like for real. Like they were trying to freak people out everywhere.
And you got to think about too what was going on in the world. And the Filth and the Fury documentary was really worth checking out. It's hard to find.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube. Yeah, but they talk a lot, or they have clips of like other things that are going on. You know, like unemployment is high. You know, and the music scene is like, you know, Yes, and all this progressive rock and this really big elaborate, you know, arena shows and all this other kind of shit is going on, and you know the hippies, they're kind of, you know, we're at the tail end of that. So these guys are almost like counterculture to the counterculture.
I mean, punk was definitely to be in the middle of all music. Punk was something different than rock and roll. Punk was something different than country. Punk was something different than a lot of things that were going on. And I think for what their economy had a lot to do with their sound, with their, you know, grittiness of the band, you know, just because, you know, like they said in the Filth and the Fury, there was like a trash protest, like the collectors weren't coming around to pick up the trash, and they said trash was everywhere in England and up and down the street. And I think that's a lot to say about what the Sex Pistols come from. They come from garbage, you know, they come from a place where their generation is no future for them at all.
Right. Sure.
You know?
Yeah. So this dude is, well, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I said, like, so this guy, like Malcolm and his girlfriend or his wife, they're running the store, and like teenagers start hanging out there all the time. And, you know, two guys start hanging out, and they're in a band called the Strand, or they changed their name to the Swankers. And, you know, Steve Jones he's kind of like a petty criminal. He was like molested as a kid. He had a rough upbringing.
I think Steve Jones is the beginning of punk rock. His whole attitude, his whole way of life, of where he comes from, the idea of being aggressive, like fuck you, instead of being like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He was the perfect guy to represent England in that generation. And what they did, it was grittiness.
Banging on the guitar.
Yeah.
He was illiterate. You know, he taught himself how to play guitar. He got his guitar, actually. These guys, when they were in this band, they started breaking into venues, and they would steal gear from like Bowie, Bob Marley, Rod Stewart.
Oh yeah. They totally went into the theater and stole shit during the day when they were punks.
Right.
You know, they were punks.
The miniseries has him getting beat to shit by trying to steal gear from Hawkwind, which was Lemmy's first band. But I said that didn't happen. That was just kind of they put that in there. But the guys were hanging out in there, and they're like, "Hey man, we're in a band." He starts asking Malcolm McLaren for some advice, and Malcolm's like, "Hey man, you should get this guy who works on my store, Glenn Matlock. He could be your bass player, who worked there part time."
You know, everybody wants to talk about Sid Vicious, but it's Glenn Matlock on those albums.
Yes.
You know, he is a big part of that record. You know, Sid Vicious came in later, but Glenn Matlock, Paul Cook was a great drummer.
Yeah. Glenn Matlock wrote a lot of those songs.
I think Glenn was the most musically trained out of all of them. He like knew how to play Beatles songs. He knew how to do shit. So, you know, Steve Jones had to invent a way to play music his own way, because he couldn't learn the guitar like the way that you're supposed to. He can only learn guitar the way that he can feel it, you know, which is a big part of his sound. Like, what chord is he playing? Who fucking knows? But he's making this passionate, aggressive sound.
Right. It doesn't matter what chord you're playing. It's just how the emotion that it's going to invoke in people.
he like invented sounds. You know, he practiced his ass off and eventually wrote his own songs. I don't think he could play many covers. Like he can't play like any other songs besides the Sex Pistols songs because he wrote them. You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, dude. It's he's got a style about him.
Yeah. His style is very, very gritty. You can hear it. It's self-taught. You can hear its passion.
Well, he was initially the singer for this band too, and they played a couple of gigs, and it didn't go well. And they had another dude in the band named Wally Nightingale, which I said in the punk episode. That's not a very punk name, and he didn't look very punk either. And they, Malcolm was like, he's got to go, man. He doesn't look rock and roll. He's not rock and roll. Steve Jones picks up the guitar, and at some point they actually asked Sylvian from the New York Dolls to come over and be the lead singer, and it didn't work. And then they just saw this dude just hanging out. Johnny Lydon was just hanging out in the store wearing a Pink Floyd shirt with the the holes in the eyes torn out and the words "I hate" written above it.
He was an original from the start.
Yeah, man. He had green hair and his shirt was all was torn and held together by safety pins. And they had him sing along to "I'm 18" by Alice Cooper as a demo, like sing along. They put it on the jukebox, and that's how they got him in the band. And they were like, "You're hired."
They plagiarized it on that TV show, and like he starts singing, and he's like singing crazy babbling shit. You know, the great thing about Johnny Rotten, none of his lyrics rhyme; they're just statements. You know, but yeah, he jumped on the jukebox, starts singing, and I think what's the manager's name?
Malcolm McLaren.
Yeah, Malcolm saw he'll fit in fashionably before he thought he'll fit in musically.
Right. You've got the look. Give it a shot. And he got the name Johnny Rotten because he didn't brush his teeth. Steve Jones.
He had the worst teeth.
Yeah.
Around him and Shane MacGowan.
Right. He's a Brit, and he's got terrible teeth for a Brit. And then the band becomes the Sex Pistols, kind of after sex, after the the name of the store, and the pistols, like, image of a gun. And
yeah.
And Malcolm McLaren kept calling them my sexy young assassins, and he said like sex was kind of short of that. So
yeah. Do you think Malcolm was the best thing that could happen for them, or was it the worst thing that could happen to them?
I don't know who's the shitbag of the week this week, if it's Malcolm McLaren, Sid Vicious, or Nancy Spungen.
Nancy.
There's three bad people, because Malcolm gets in the middle, like he pokes his head around, that he pushes them a couple times in directions that they don't want to go. And he wants them fighting with each other because it's more.
Yeah, it brings it to the music.
Right.
He wanted chaos.
Yeah.
He wanted. I think that's what made that first album, was that they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
Like they wanted to invent. They wanted to keep on inventing their own sound, and Malcolm wanted to keep them doing the same thing, like just do the same thing. And Johnny Rotten, the last thing he's going to do is sell out. Like he's not going to, you're not going to make that dude do anything.
At some point, I think like Glenn Matlock, when he leaves the band, I read something. He said like Malcolm was kind of turning us into more like the Monkees, like like a TV. Like at some point, man, they become more famous for like being on TV and their antics and the music, which is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I think. I don't know if this could be a good statement, but the Sex Pistols gave punk a bad name, dude. Like,
sure. Yeah.
Like they were the ones that were spitting on everybody. They were the ones that were cursing, picking their nose, doing snot rockets, doing all this gross out shit, and they were encouraging everybody else to do it. That's an England thing, dude.
Right. You didn't hear the Ramones doing that.
No, the Ramones were more of a militant kind of.
Right.
Not militant. They were more of like a group, a gang.
Right. And you
like, don't fuck around, The
Clash didn't do that,
The Clash I think the Clash come from a different society than what the Sex Pistols came from. The Sex Pistols came from nothing. They don't even have any talent. They came from nothing and with no talent. They took a shot.
And that's, and what's so crazy too is they did that. And as improbable as it was, right? That they're put together by this dude who has a vision as an art project. I want to piss people off and get like it's such a fucking great album. You know, it's just like they made one of the most important. The research I was doing. Somebody compared it to Nevermind, like that impact.
Sure.
Like, and I was like,
absolutely.
yeah, man, I could absolutely see that. Like, if you're that generation, it just changes everything.
Yes, it changed everything. Then everybody started copying them, and before you knew it, punk was big, and it was over fast.
Right.
Yeah.
So they get together and they start doing some gigs, and I told the story a little bit in the punk episode, but they open for a band called Bazooka Joe, and they get in a fight with Bazooka Joe on the stage because they're pulling they want to use their own amps, and Bazooka Joe's like, no, you lose our shit, and they were too loud and they were unplugging it. But the bass player for Bazooka Joe goes on and becomes Adam Ant, the 80s singer. And then as they continue playing these small gigs, Johnny Rotten would start throwing chairs and walking off the stage. And Steve Jones gave that famous interview with NME, and he says, we're not into music, we're into chaos.
Yeah.
Even though that gets attributed to Johnny Rotten, Steve Jones said it.
Yeah. Steve Jones is a brilliant dude, man. For an illiterate guy, he's a brilliant dude. I can relate to him a lot, man.
And you know what, dude, was interesting too, man, reading about Johnny Rotten. Well, you said they all come from nothing. Like, Johnny Rotten was saying that, like, his parents used to take in, like, orphans when he was little.
Yeah.
And he came from there's more depth to him as a person than I initially thought. He's like, I mean, you think of Johnny, like, I think of punk and the sneering, like, fuck you attitude of punk. I think of either Sid Vicious or Johnny Rotten.
And Johnny Rotten seems like he's a good person. It's just like he hates people who sell the fuck out. It's like Henry Rollins. He's just a little bit more honest and don't give a fuck than Henry Rollins does. Henry Rollins is real, he wants to keep that exposure. But, Johnny Rotten, the best thing he had in the 90s on VH1, he had his own talk TV show.
I never saw that. I watched it. I just watched an episode. I gave some interview he did, right? Like, he went on some British talk show talking about the documentary or the miniseries and how he wasn't a part of it, and he actually sued to have it blocked. And I was like,
oh wow.
He was very articulate, and he wasn't, he's in his late 60s now, mid 60s. He's older. He still looks a little ridiculous, but it was I don't know, man. I was digging his vibe, just what he was saying.
I dig Johnny Rotten.
He was talking about, like, he raises a lot of money. His wife has Alzheimer's, and he raised a lot of money to, like, he has a charity, or it was for a charity called Spit, where, like, the money was going to Alzheimer's. And it was kind of, it's kind of cool that it's like, he's famous for spitting on people, and his charity's got that name, but it was going to help his wife. I don't know, man. It was like a little,
like I said, I think
it was like sweet in a way.
I think that's the natural way that all those guys were. They were all sweet. Like, before Sid even joined the band, he was Johnny's boy. They were friends. And, Sid would stay at Johnny's house. His parents would take him. And this is way before they were in the Sex Pistols. This is why they were children. Sid was a maniac from the start off. But Johnny definitely took Sid in at a young age, Sid would have been running the street and, like, living in the ghetto if it wasn't for John.
Yeah. Well, Sid's real name was John, so they had a band of John. They had three guys named John in the band. Yeah, the Johns.
The Johns.
Yeah. They were lifelong friends, and he just started kind of going to all their shows, and he was watching his boy, and suddenly was like, I want to do that. And I guess we'll get to that, man, when they replaced Glenn Matlock and put a bit. So they're playing all these they're playing all these gigs, and they're fighting, and they're spitting on people and all this other shit. And then they get their record deal.
Which is crazy.
They get signed to EMI, and the producer, they got the producer who did Dark Side of the Moon. The producer guy, Chris Thomas. And he started working. He said he was working on their album at the same time he was doing an album for Paul McCartney. He would work on one during the day, and he would go to another studio at night. And he did Roxy. He produced shit from Roxy Music, which the guys from the Sex Pistols really looked up to. Elton John, In Excess, and he produced Dark Side of the Moon. And there's so then under this deal they record Anarchy in the US, the Anarchy in the UK, and they release it as a single. And it's just man, what a great friggin' song.
I first heard that song when I was a little kid, and Skid Row covered it. And I was like, whoa, this song's unreal. I didn't find out later it was a Sex Pistols song. But I knew that. I know this song from a very young age. It was like definitely introduction to punk when Skid Row played this song and I saw them do it. And it was awesome, man.
Yeah, man. We played 30 seconds of it out of the intro, but here, I'll just pick up where we left off. We'll play another 30 seconds. It's such a great tune.
Traffic line, your future dream is a shopping scheme design. I wanna be anarchy in the city.
I love that he does in the background.
Oh,
of the guitar.
yeah.
It's just great.
Those little sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's from them not knowing what they're doing. They're just fucking amplified and electric.
Yeah, man. They tried so hard to get that, the beginning when he goes, right now. And he was trying to hit it. He was trying to line it up with the notes. And he was like, I don't know fuck about meter and beats and, measures and try to hit something. Like, just
and I think his singing says that all the way. Like, he don't know shit about how music direction is supposed to go. He just knows he's up there singing what he thinks.
Yeah, he's got there's something with his voice, man, like the way like it pulls and pushes and it goes like
it's
in
annoying.
and out and up and down. It kind of is a little bit.
I love it.
I love it. It really, really fits what they're trying to do.
Totally. He's a punk. What he sounds like is the asshole kid down the street.
Right.
He like the definition of a punk is a little asshole.
Yeah, sure. So that that comes out, and they weren't on EMI really long, and there's kind of two incidents that happened that get them kicked off very quickly. And the first one was they go on the Today Show with Bill Grundy.
Oh yeah,
that's like a very famous show on London. It's live. It's live on the air. Queen was supposed to be on the show. They backed out at the last minute. Freddie Mercury had a dentist appointment. Queen was on EMI.
Could you imagine those two bands together on one show?
I've got
Holy
something.
shit.
I've got something later with Queen and Sid Vicious. Freddie Mercury almost kicked Sid Vicious's ass.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm
sure.
Hang on, I'll jump to it real quick. Sid Vicious said they were recording and they could hear Queen in the next one, and he started calling him dull, and he just walked into the studio, and what Queen was recording, it was like, oh, have you taught everybody how to do ballet yet? Like, was kind of insulting him, and Freddie called him Simon Ferocious, and said he grabbed him by the neck and threw him out of the studio.
He's lucky Sid didn't fucking kill him.
I know.
Sid was a street guy.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
Freddie was
definitely.
just a
a
school kid. Not rich school kid, but
you could totally see him like, oh, what are you? You're Simon Ferocious or whatever your name is. Get out of here. Just awesome.
Yeah.
But anyway, man. So they go on the Today Show, and the staff brings their whole entourage, and
you have like 10 people up there.
Yeah, and they're allowed to have alcohol beforehand.
Oh man, that was a bad idea.
Yeah, so they're getting hammered. The host is like, well, F it, I'm going to have one too. And he gets a little buzz. And he's kind of an asshole during the interview. I watched the whole thing. We played it on the punk episode, but he
was like egging them on. Like, come on, let's see the real you. Come on.
Yeah, he was like referring to the band in the third person while they're sitting right there. And at one point Susie Sue says like, I've always wanted to meet you. And the guy's like, oh, did you really? Well, let's meet afterwards, shall we? And they thought he was hitting on her. And Steve Jones just
Steve Jones is not having it.
Yeah, calls him a dirty old man.
Yeah, and he's like, you're a fucker, or whatever he says to him. And they got so much publicity for him saying "fuck" on TV on the BBC.
Yeah, you're a dirty bastard.
Remember, you see that shirt that he had on though too? Is it ladies' boobs? And I
didn't notice that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's not even blurred out or anything. And they were like, Johnny Rotten in that interview is brilliant. He's like on the side and you just hear him saying shit and like really like bad shit. And then they were like, oh, what was that? Oh, nothing.
Yeah. I said a bad word. Yeah. I said a bad word. Next question. I was like, what was the bad word? He's like, shit.
Yeah. Yeah. But they were honest, man.
Yeah.
They were. Their music was honest. They were honest. The movement was honest.
Yeah, and it was like the first time that anybody British dropped the F word on the TV, on
Good for them.
And it was like immediately was on like the front page of every newspaper the next day, right? Like the headline in the Daily Mirror was "The Filth and Fury."
Oh, God, what a title! We might have to steal that for the name of our show.
I know. And Bill Grundy, this basically like ended his career. Like he got suspended, he came back, and he was done after this for kind of egging him on and all this other kind of shit. And they're immediately public enemy number one, man.
And they fucking love it.
This is the shit that Malcolm McLaren wanted. But there's also like huge blowback, against them. And the staff at EMI refused to, like, some of the workers were like, we're not going to package the single for Anarchy in the UK.
Yeah. They were so offensive to England. Right. They were like any, like, British wearing dude. They were like putting down their country. It'd be like compared today of like politics of a Democrat going to a Republican party and just giving them the finger and shit like that.
Right. Think about like nowhere near this on this level, but like remember the Dixie Chicks a couple years ago came out and said they were embarrassed to be from Texas or something, and they were like they got canceled for like
that killed their career.
Yeah,
they changed their name.
Yeah. Well, they
changed their name, didn't they?
Yeah, they're just the Chicks now. More.
That's a better name. That's a better name. The Chicks.
Yeah. I have a quote from a British politician about the Sex Pistols right after this. They're unbelievably nauseating. They're the antithesis of humankind. I would like to see somebody dig a very, very large, exceedingly deep hole and drop the whole bloody lot of them down it.
Wow.
I just love it. Like they're just, everybody, the thought of the prim and proper British, so people are sitting around drinking their tea and they went on TV looking like that and then dropping the F-bomb. It was like, you just didn't behave that way.
Yeah. I mean, they represented a generation of bums,
right.
and they're just a product of what their country made them,
right.
Their country, their poverty, the country that the Sex Pistols grew up in, and now all the proper dudes are like, oh, very nice and all that, and they're like, you're a wanker,
right? And the media starts the media just follows them everywhere. Promoters start like canceling gigs because they don't want to deal with like the protesters and all this shit. I mean, these guys were like, they got to the point like they were like they would go for a walk and people would assault them, or like somebody threw a brick through Malcolm McLaren's like window.
Oh God,
like they were that offended.
There were the stories that the Sex Pistols had gigs set up and it went from town to town, and when they would get there, they would cancel the gig, but still get paid for showing up.
Yeah.
So that we were like, he was like that. We did this one tour. We just showed up at the gig, and they said we're not playing tonight, and they paid us, and we leave. He's like, we did that for a very short time.
Yeah, and at the end, like they started playing under the. They went on tours that is called Spots, which stood for Sex Pistols on Tour Secretly, because they didn't want to book everything as like under their name because they were getting canceled like everywhere. But yeah, man. So they're public enemy number one. They're everywhere. I mean, it's like I can't even make a Carly. Like think about Sinead O'Connor when she ripped the picture of the Pope. Like the blowback.
Oh, sure.
It's like this time, like that time's like 100.
Yeah, I mean, the English are very proud people,
right?
They're
and
eventually
EMI is like, all right, dude, you're out. There's another incident, like they're at an airport and somebody like they spit on somebody, and then very quickly afterwards they're out. EMI dumps them.
Who was the record company that they signed to outside of Buckingham Palace?
A&M. Well, hang on. So they get dumped from EMI.
Okay.
And then very quickly they write a song called EMI.
Yeah, EMI.
Yeah, which is about like, and it's Johnny Rotten immediately giving the middle finger to them. So let's play a little bit of that.
Yeah, play it, bro.
Another great tune.
Oh yeah.
It's an unlimited supply, and there is no reason why. I tell you, it was all a frame. They only did it because of fame. Who? EMI.
That's a great example of his voice being annoying.
I think it's great.
I love that song. It's on my running playlist, but it's just,
It's so annoying. It's great.
Yeah.
The sound that it all makes together, it works.
Absolutely. Before they leave and they get dumped by EMI and they're looking for another label. But before they do that, before they sign another record label, they have a really big personnel change. And that's when Glenn Matlock it leaves. And there's conflicting stories on why and under what circumstances.
I think he was just a different kind of person than the rest of them. He like we're saying, like the English proper. I think Glenn was more that, and he didn't fit in to the band. So when he left the band, they're like, okay, no problem. Musically, they needed him. But
right, yeah. Like I said earlier, man, like he wrote so many of these songs.
Everybody just thinks it's Sid. No, it's Glenn was the guy.
Right.
Like Glenn's the one that sweated it out with the band to write all those songs.
I think he has co-writing on all but like 2 songs on that album.
Oh, he's probably still getting money.
I'm sure he is. And, so he, and they said that he didn't get along with Johnny Rotten and he was more in like the Beatles and the Small Faces. And they said he wasn't very punk and shit like that. It was just, whatever, man. He didn't like the song God Save the Queen. He thought it was too much.
Yeah.
But he gets replaced with Sid Vicious, Johnny Rotten's buddy.
Which Sid got hired because he looked like the punk.
Yeah, we said we were trading notes, text messages before this week, and I was like, yeah, he's the biggest media creation in rock and roll.
He people don't know, Sid did not even know how to tune his guitar.
Right.
He was so untalented. He was just famous for being a mess. You ever see that picture of him with the leather jacket and the pin that says "I'm a mess"?
Yeah.
And he has a hot dog and the mustard's all over his face.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, he was a junkie, and he gets really bad at the end.
Yeah.
But he's Johnny Rotten's boy, and
they were childhood friends.
And he gets the name Sid Vicious from Johnny Rotten's like hamster. His pet hamster like bit him, and he was like, "Oh, that's Sid Vicious." I think the hamster was named Sid, and he's like, it was vicious, and that's where the name comes from. He kind of dicked around and played drums with Susie and the Banshees like a little bit. But he wasn't a musician at all, and he didn't know shit about the bass. And even there's a scene in the miniseries where he's trying to they're talking about he wants to focus on his hair, and Johnny Rotten's like, dude, you got to do the note. He's like, fuck the music, it's about my how do I get my hair standing looking right.
Like he didn't even attempt to learn how to play when someone else would be like, all right, I'm in this fucking band, I'm going to learn the songs just as good as Glenn is. I'm going to try. I'm going to put one more. Sid was a fucking junkie, and lazy. He was just like, I'm just going to jump around with the bass and like sneer at people and spit and like cut myself on the chest. He thought that was the most important part of punk, which is a big part of, to be a mess if you want to be. That's punk rock,
Yeah, it kind of.
I have a weird definition of punk rock, and I've been saying it for years and years and years. And I guess I call punk rock as something original, something very passionate, like has to be total passionate and gritty.
Okay.
That's punk rock to me. Like, I'll sit there or to be a good person when this person's a shitty person. That's punk rock.
Okay.
I don't know.
That makes sense.
Like the warden had a really bad tattoo.
Right.
And I got him a new tattoo. That's punk rock.
Definitely. Johnny Rotten joining the Sex Pistols as a super fan would be like if we let the warden on the show. So
yes. I don't think the warden could sing like Johnny.
No. We have to do it. We'll have him sing Alice Cooper at the bar or something.
I'm 18.
My God. Yeah, man, it's Sid really. Glenn Matlock said that Sid joining turned the band into kind of a cartoon, and I agree, man. I think this is this ruins this ends them.
Sid was a fucking t-shirt.
Yes,
that's all that those dudes thought of. You know.
Yep, he was a good-looking dude. He had the sneering all the time, and calling him a t-shirt is a great way to sum him up.
He was the biggest Sex Pistol fan. He was at every show, jumping around and making crazy mayhem in the crowd. It was just obvious. Oh, we got to put him on stage.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, man. That's like how Henry Rollins gets hooked up with Black Flag. But Henry Rollins, Henry Rollins isn't a talented musician either, but he at least put some effort into it,
Total. Yeah. And Henry Rollins is not a hopeless junkie.
Right.
He's like, I don't think Sid was a smart guy. Again, I think Sid was a product of his environment. His mom didn't give a shit about him.
No.
His mom gave him a taste of drugs real early in life.
Yeah. So he joins, man. He gives no shit. So sometimes even the gigs, he didn't even plug in. Either he didn't care, the band didn't care, or he was just so whacked out. It didn't matter. But people were
coming to see him.
Right.
At the end. Yeah. To see like no talent bastard up there. People were coming at the end to see this bullshit.
And like you said, there's videos of him. You can see him. He's got like blood all over him because he's on stage with a broken bottle, like carving shit into his chest and bleeding everywhere.
And then you hear in the background Anarchy in the UK and it's Glenn Matlock playing the bass. And you're like, oh yeah,
Right.
He was just a tool for publicity. He was hype.
And that's what Malcolm McLaren wanted. He was like, he looks the part, he's destructive, he'll be great. But they get signed to A&M and they do the ceremony where they sign they sign the contract outside of Buckingham Palace to celebrate it.
Brilliant. And you ever see that footage? It's fucking hysterical.
Yeah.
They come piling out of the
big limo. Yeah.
And they come out and they look like hell.
Yeah.
And they're like, have table, and Malcolm's like all like being, all right, press, take the pictures, and they're just fucking wasted.
And then there's an after party back at the A&M offices, and Sid, like, he smashes a toilet or something, and he cuts his foot, and he's walking around, he's bleeding everywhere. And Johnny Rotten starts acting like an asshole. Yeah. And then a couple of days later, there's something else, and somebody in the band's entourage threatened to kill like a good friend of the head of the record label. And they get dumped. It was like less than 10 days before they get signed. They get dumped. The label had already printed like 25,000 copies of God Save the Queen. And most of them were like
stuck with them.
Well, they destroyed most of them. And apparently, like,
really?
Find one now. That's a big like collector's item.
Oh, wow.
So,
if you find any Sex Pistol like 45 from back in the day, it's like priceless.
What is it? They wanted to, and Johnny Rotten wanted to call the song like No Future.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Malcolm decides that like we're going to call it God Save the Queen because of the Jubilee is coming up, the Queen's anniversary of being in power. The Silver Jubilee is coming up.
Man, he was so like, let's just take advantage of anything that's in the news, and we're going to be a part of it.
Right. Yeah. So now they've been on 2 record labels. They haven't released an album. And then Richard Branson shows up, and Richard Branson signs him to, Virgin Records. And he's still kind of like an up and coming guy at this point, not the zillionaire that he is now. And his label gets pissed off too. Virgin Records, like some of those employees are like, oh man, we're not making the album. We refuse to. And they have this brilliant idea. Like, it won't get on the radio. They can't get any gigs because they pissed off everybody. They pissed off the media, the press, everybody in the music establishment. And they come up with this great idea that they're like, all right, we got it. We know how we're going to get some publicity out of this. We're going to rent a boat, and we're going to get on, and we're going to sail down the Thames River right past Buckingham Palace on the Queen's Silver Jubilee. It's 25 years on the throne. And they go past Parliament and the band plays, and then the police beat the shit out of Malcolm afterwards. People get arrested and the police kick the crap out of him.
Oh, Malcolm had it coming.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, he was probably egging them on. He was probably egging the police on.
Yeah,
Malcolm was just in the chaos, and whatever he could do to get the name in the paper, that's what he would do.
Yeah. So, I mean, you think about it, like a regular old chap in London, you've seen like these guys have been like F-bombing on the news. And now what's bigger than like the Queen's Jubilee to honor the monarch? And they're just giving the middle finger to that too.
What was the Queen Jubilee? I don't even know what that is.
It was for 25 years of her being on the throne.
Okay. And this was what, 77?
Yeah. Something like that.
I don't know. It was a celebration that lasted what, like a week? Was it like a 4th of July? Like a 4th of July kind of thing?
Yeah.
Like a extended weekend kind of thing? I don't know.
It's just like it's just a big deal.
So they only do it every 25 years, or
something like that. Yeah, like
Yeah.
they just had a jubilee.
Yeah, they did. That's right.
And she's eternal.
Ugh, she's never going to die.
Yeah, she's like 96 now, 95, something like that.
She's probably been dead for a while. They just got a wax
They
figure
just put
on
like
her.
Weekend at Bernie's. Just kind of pop her up. But I don't know, man. Oh, you know what, dude? Let's play a little bit of God Save the Queen.
Yes.
Here we
No
go.
future.
God save the Queen, the fascist regime. It made you a moron, potential hate bomb. God save the Queen, she ain't no human being. There is no future in England's dreaming.
I love it.
Oh, yeah. I'm sitting here thinking, I wonder if, when he says, God save the Queen, the first thing he says, I wonder if Malcolm heard that and was like, cha-ching.
Sure.
Because, it's, like if you play later in the song, he just keeps on going off on no future.
Yeah.
And that's what they wanted to.
He said he wasn't even like making fun of her as a person. He's more like just the institution of having a monarchy.
Yeah. Yeah.
He said like it made you a moron. Like you're. Yeah, man, but it just pisses off everybody. I mean, it's like just Sinead O'Connor flipping off the Pope. The Queen is on like that level of revered in England. And, shit, man, 100 years ago, you would have been beheaded for, fuck King George or something else.
Yeah.
Like you were executed for that.
Yeah. And they were.
And what makes it great, man, is that then the song goes to number one, but the BBC like lies and won't report that it's number one. They just flat out like moved it down the charts and put Rod Stewart number one. Or sometimes they would play the charts and they would go like, all right, we just got done playing song number 4, song number 2, and they just skip it altogether and they won't even play it.
Yeah. Like if you see it like written down that month or that week in a magazine, it's just the number 1 slot is empty.
It's blank. Yeah.
And then the second one was Rod Stewart, right?
Yeah, yeah. And this is now they're getting into fights everywhere, and they're booking under that fake name, the Sex Pistols, under tour secretly.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're getting at one point like Johnny Rotten, some dude attacks him with a razor blade in the street, like just walks up to him and jumps him and stabs him.
Yeah,
and
they were pissing people off left and right. Yeah,
man. The store, the Virgin Records there was a Virgin Records store, and they get, a lot of first of all, a lot of record stores wouldn't even sell the album, never mind the Bullocks. And Virgin Records actually got sued for obscenity for putting the album on display in their window.
I was wondering what kind of band had more obscenity at that time than they did on a record.
I don't know, man. That'd be good homework. Like, what are some of the other like crap that's out?
What other bands were they like pushing the envelope? I don't know.
I don't know, man. Like Sabbath, they're around, right? But they're not.
Yeah.
I'll look into that as some of my homework. So, yeah, man. We're probably up to the point where we're going to talk about Nancy a little bit. Maybe it's a good spot to take a break because this is like bringing up her, and then their kind of end and the messiness, and we can play some more songs. Why don't we take a break and we'll be right back.
All right,
stick around.
Yeah.
Prisoners of Rock and Roll is sponsored by McCusker's Tavern at 17th and Shunk Streets in Philadelphia. There's something for everyone on the food list and the jukebox at McCusker's. It's minutes from the sports stadiums in Philly, making it a great place to stop by for a few drinks before or after a concert or a game. Come see for yourself why everyone from Philadelphia Magazine to Playboy has called it one of the best dive bars in the city. Visit them at 17th and Shunk Streets in Philadelphia or on Facebook. That's McCusker's Tavern.
Man, I am so excited to tell you that Prisoners of Rock and Roll is sponsored by Boldfoot Socks. We're thrilled to have them on board because they're just good people who do good work while making a good product. Let me tell you why. Their motto is grown here and sewn here because Boldfoot socks are made in America. They have a variety of styles and designs for everything from work, working out, or doing a podcast. They're a veteran-owned business and give 5% of all their proceeds to veteran charities. And I'm just down with companies who pay it forward. So Boldfoot is cool with me, and they're cool with the show. And as soon as you're done listening to us, you can go over to boldfoot.com and check out all the different styles of socks they have. That's boldfoot.com. So, all right, man. So
they're great people, man.
They really are, man. And we're really thrilled to have them. And it's cool to hear their other shows on the Pantheon family talking about it, too.
Yeah, they're great to the vets. I'm all about that.
Yeah, man. I'm all about paying it forward. So really good stuff. So proud to have them as a sponsor.
Totally.
All right, man. So we're kind of we're about to introduce the shitbag Nancy Spungen, but you just, as we were taking our little commercial break, we're like, man, there's all these other songs on this album we got to be playing, man. Why don't we just let's play a little bit of them, talk about them, then we can talk about that piece of shit and what she was and everything else. Man, the song Bodies.
Yeah,
it's on there.
Play that.
All right. And I got a couple questions about it. Here you go. Man, so that song is about a woman that had an abortion, right? And it's in the miniseries, and I didn't know if this was true or this was like an embellishment. But there's there's a woman who starts following the band around, and she was like a mental patient, and she was raped when she was in the mental hospital. And he says like she was a woman that lived in a tree, like she would get out of the mental hospital and like run up a tree or something, and she killed the baby or had an abortion, and she carried the fetus around in a bag. Yeah. And at some point she's walking around like showing it to, I think he shows it to Malcolm McLaren's wife, and he shows it to somebody in the band. And then she kind of she finds a dude to rape him, and like the one episode ends, she like stabs him. And I was like, I don't remember if that was true or not. And I didn't look it up if that's if that was just kind of like you
listen to the words. I mean, it's, if you watch, I don't know, maybe they made it up after this song. I mean, it's basically the story of that woman. Yeah. I think about that part a lot of that show. You know, I don't know. It was very heartbreaking. She was a great character. This homeless crazy woman that fell in love with the Sex Pistols. Yeah.
Yes, it says that it was a real person, that Johnny Rotten said it was a real person. I guess there's an interview where he says that she was real. Interesting.
Wow. I mean, that's what the Sex Pistols, that's who follows them. You know, these crazy fucking people at first, before it was hip, you know, before it was hip in the 90s to listen to punk rock.
So I just Googled, like, there was a real, like, in the scene. They said, like, yes, it was. Somebody came to his door with a clear plastic bag with a fetus in it. And this is Johnny Rotten. I didn't write it to cause a commotion. It was realism. My mom had a lot of miscarriages when she was young, and as the oldest child, I was the one that had to carry the bucket and flush it down the toilets outside. Sometimes it took several flushes, and sometimes there'd be a recognizable body parts in it.
He's fucking unbelievable. He has a way with words.
Right.
I love him. I can't help myself.
Whether that's true or not, it was just like, you know, I believe
just the way who would make that up.
Right.
That's so bizarre. Like, who can make that up?
Yeah.
Only the truth would come through Johnny Rotten's mouth.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that basically what broke up the band, his mouth and this woman that we're about to talk about.
Yeah. And that's a song about abortion in the 70s. You know, it's like, that's not a lot. It's about a mental illness and abortion. It's like, man, that's pretty groundbreaking for 77.
Yeah. I mean, on a record.
Right.
Sure.
It's a number 2 song on the record. For some reason, that one on Spotify, that has an E next to it for explicit, but none of the other songs on here do.
I mean, there's a lot of language on all the songs.
Yeah, right. Fucking destroy and all that other stuff. But that one, maybe because of the subject matter. Let's play one more song, man, before we move on.
Play No Feelings. I
No
like
Feelings,
that one.
another great song, too. Here you go.
I seen you in the meadow where the story began, and I fell in love with you. I love you most, dear. Your friends are not the wave, and I love your company. I only ever leave you when you got no money. I got no emotion for anybody else. You better understand I'm in love with myself, my beautiful self. I don't feel
I'm sitting here fighting a cold as we're doing this. I just had to lean away from the microphone and cough. This should be somebody new for me to spit on listening to this. doing this. Like, hey, you blimey fucker. You dirty bastard. But anyway, yeah, man. This album is just the comparison to Nevermind is just great. And I read it somewhere, and it wasn't my idea, but it's like I could definitely hear the parallels between the two of them.
I think Nirvana was way musically better than the Sex Pistols will ever be.
I agree. But the Sex Pistols are doing this first, too.
Oh, yeah.
Nirvana's building on it.
You know what always made interesting? When I first heard Nevermind the Bollocks, the only Sex Pistol album, the production value of it really caught my eye. And I was like, how poorly I thought it sounded. You know, and then later the years go on and you find out it's the guy who made the Pink Floyd album and all these ELO albums and all this other shit that sound amazing, like everything's like to a T, like, but then to record Nevermind the Bollocks so gritty and so like sounds like so low production.
Yeah, there's a story around like there's 2 producers on the album and like they because they get dumped off to so many record labels and they were kind of like splicing shit together, like different takes and stuff. But I'd imagine I'm sure that the sound that it came out with, I'm sure that's by design.
Okay.
Like you said, man, I mean, you got like Yes and Kansas and all these progressive rock, acts doing these.
But like, nothing sounds like Nevermind the Bollocks. It's so gritty. Just, it's amazing that I didn't figure out until later in life that they made it sound like that on purpose.
I'm not even smart enough till I just realized, like, the way you just said the name, like, Nevermind the Bollocks and Nevermind by Nirvana.
Oh, wow.
I was like, shit, maybe that's where they got the idea. It could be.
Could be. Coincidence?
Could be. But, all right, man, let's talk about piece of shit, scumbag, Nancy Sponge.
If there was anyone worse than Yoko Ono, it was Nancy.
She was the let's just give her shitbag of the week.
Shitbag of the week.
Shitbag of the week. Yeah, she was like the Yoko Ono of punk rock.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, so she was a hooker. She was a prostitute. She fooled around, was like a hanger-on for the New York Dolls, which is weird that's like there's another connection to the New York Dolls in the story. She was from Philadelphia, which I thought like I never knew that she was from Philly. And she's buried in Ben Salem, which is 15 minutes up the road from Philadelphia.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
I've had friends over the years go to her grave. They're like really weird people, but they went to visit her grave.
If I was driving in that area, some friends who live in that area, I might stop and check it out.
The only reason I would stop by there is that's where Sid's mom that dumped his ashes is on her grave. So like if Sid's anywhere, he's on that property, like right through there. So that would be the only reason I would go. Not for her, because Sid's ashes are buried there.
Right. And I mean, she's an important part of the story of rock and roll. She's a scumbag and she contributes nothing.
She contributes to the music. I mean, she is a product of the music. She's just this groupie whore drug addict. Right.
And she starts hanging around the band and she basically got Sid Vicious hooked on heroin. And everyone in the band is like, they're like colluding to try to get rid of her. At one point they think about just like kidnapping her and just like driving her somewhere and leaving her. Yeah,
on
they
that
tried
TV
to get her
show.
all
They're
fucked up on drugs and tried just putting her on a train or a plane back
Yeah.
to New York. And they all know it. They're all like, even Johnny Rotten's like, I've done every drug in the world, but he's like, man, you do not touch heroin. You just don't do it. I know it'll destroy you. And Sid was his friend too, man. And so he was watching his buddy, his boy he's known from the kid, become this like disaster.
I don't know. I don't, how Johnny thinks. He's like, I can't turn him over, so why am I going to break his balls about it?
Yeah, there was a couple of things I read with him when he said he regretted bringing him in the band. He was like, I should have told him what he was getting himself into by being in a punk rock band and moving that fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she was, at some point, like she's in like the meetings with the band, and Sid's like, she's basically in the band, and they were like, get the fuck out of the room. Like, you're not, it was like a Yoko Ono, John Lennon kind of thing.
Totally.
Yeah, and they all hated her, and they rolled with that huge entourage too of all these other people that were always around them, and they wanted no part of her. They all knew right away that she was bad. I read an interview with Steve Jones. He said he's never felt worse about another person than the time he met her. He's like, the day I met her, she just had a black cloud over her head, and it was like, she is bad news. And it's like
some people,
right? Just give off that vibe. They're like, you're just bad.
Like what? She had definitely mental illness.
I think so too.
She had history. Like she had like papers, like that she was in a hospital.
Yeah.
You ever see the Sid and Nancy movie?
I didn't, and that was on my list of shit to watch this week. I never watched it. As much as I really like Gary Oldman too, I've never watched it.
He is awesome as Sid Vicious. If anybody did Sid Vicious justice, it was him. Because Sid was in a few different versions of different movies, but he really gives justice, man.
Maybe I'll watch it tomorrow when I'm at work.
It's really gritty. It's really like a really sad story, obviously.
Yeah.
But
heroin addiction's no fun. And and you get to see, everybody saw it. Like he was, said he was playing and not hooking in, and he wasn't playing his instruments, and he's just dragging everybody down. And
but why do they keep him in the band? Was he couldn't play.
Never trust a junkie, right? Like in the Ministry song. But
yeah, really. Once a junkie, always a junkie.
I think part of it too is like he was like, you kind of get these two. It's in the miniseries. Like Johnny Rotten keeps calling the other two like my backing band. And Sid Vicious too feeds into that. Like, it's the two of us. People only come to watch the two of us. Or some with Sid Vicious, like they only come to watch me. Yeah. Like it becomes more about
him.
And Malcolm loves that too. He's feeding into all that shit too.
It's like, again, the guy couldn't even play the bass, and they would unplug him, and he just would jump around on stage, and people fucking loved him for it.
Right. Even on the album, he said it's like Glenn Matlock or Steve Jones plays bass on a bunch of the tracks. Like they're like, he's not even on it.
Yeah.
As iconic as he is, right, out of all the characters in punk rock, he's like the villain, the bad guy. And it's like
I don't think he's the bad guy. I think he's the true vision or the true image of what punk rock is.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean bad guy in like the villain of punk rock. Like everybody looked at them as like the bad guys of music, like the bad boy. Yeah. He kind of sums it up. And now you can go to Target and buy a T-shirt with his face on it.
Yeah, he was sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Absolutely.
I don't know how much rock and roll he liked, but
And so they, and a couple of times Sid Vicious overdosed a couple times, and she didn't even go and visit him in the hospital. They had this weird love affair. Like he was writing poetry about her, and it's just, I went through this all the crap I watched. I went from being like really angry to like, I was like, it's really pathetic. Like just watching.
He was pathetic.
Yeah, I was like, I went from like pity to just like, dude, you're just a scumbag. Like. I have no respect for him on any angle in this story.
In no way do I think Sid was a bad guy. I think when you said he was a moron, I think that's what I think. He just was too stupid, didn't know any better. Exactly. He was and what do? They bring him to America. They did when they did. What a mess that was. Did you? Yeah, I got some stuff on that. So so summer '77. Malcolm McLaren's got this great idea. We're going to send you on tour into the U.S. And he purposefully books them in place. He doesn't book them in like New York and L.A. because that's too much. He sends them to like
into the Bible Belt, where people like you're going to go to Atlanta, you're going to go to Memphis, they go to San Antonio, Cleveland, because they want he wants the Cowboys and the people, the preachers to protest. He wants all of that shit going on around them.
I always wondered why they did that. Like, why didn't they hit New York, California, and all that places in that American tour?
Because Malcolm wanted, I think he wanted all of he wanted the fights and it's something, and I think it's in the documentary when they're playing in like Texas, and he's like, Johnny Rott's like, you cowboy motherfuckers, and a fight breaks out. Yeah. You cowboy hat wearing pig fucker or something. And it's just like, yeah, man, like Malcolm was just setting them up, I think.
Totally. The most opposite people that you could possibly do is go to a bunch of cowboys. You know, it's like, we're going to play our punk rock, almost pansy dressing in this, cowboy setting.
Right.
No way.
Right. So they get in all this big, they're playing all these venues, these tiny places, and Johnny Rotten is getting increasingly pissed off with Malcolm because, he changed the name to the God Save the Queen, and he's putting him in all this crap. And, they're traveling by bus. A couple of the other guys they travel by plane, and Johnny Rotten and Sid are just driving around on the bus, and Johnny Rotten got the flu, and Sid Vicious is high on heroin, and their last gig was at Winterland, which is just like, it's so weird because that's like San Francisco, right? It's like the hippie ground zero for the hippie movement, and then the Sex Pistols roll in. I know we're way later in the Haight-Ashbury's long gone, but it's still like, it's just funny.
The hanger-oners are still there, and they just come through and
and by that point, they know they're done. Like, they end with Johnny Rotten. They cover No Fun by the Stooges, and Johnny Rotten just ends. He ends it by going, "You ever get the feeling you've been cheated?"
Yeah.
Like he says to the crowd.
I think he felt cheated.
Yeah.
I don't know, but he, like we said, Nancy brought the band down more than any other person could do in that band.
Yeah.
Like, why couldn't he just let go of Sid? Like, just let him go. Like, I don't know. I've had friends that are so bad off, I had to let them go.
Right. You're a drag. You're just, you're not going to be the anchor and drag me down.
Johnny kept true to Sid for some reason. Like the most untalented guy in the band.
There's video of him saying that. Hang on. Let me try this on YouTube. It's Johnny Rotten just saying at the end.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated? Good night.
Yeah, he comes in like, you're going to get one song and one song only.
And he kind of laughs, but he's also, he's saying, he's been cheated. He's bitching about the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. From day one, he seemed like he went head to head with Malcolm. Like, because Malcolm wanted to control him.
Right. And I mean, he went head to head with everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. But somebody trying to exert control of him, like you said before, he's just not down with anybody telling him what to do. He's still like that.
That's what I love about him.
So then Johnny Rotten either says, I go or Malcolm goes, and Steve Jones goes back to Malcolm and rats him out, and the band votes to get rid of him. Whatever, it ends, and he's out. But the band tries to keep going, and they were going to go to right after the Winterland gig. They were all supposed to go to Brazil, and they were supposed to sing a song with a guy named Ronnie Biggs on vocals, who was like, he was a train robber who was like living in Brazil, and they were going to have him come like this. He's like, oh, he's going to join the band and sing this song. And Johnny Rotten was like, the fuck he is. Like, I sing. We're not getting we're not getting another dude who doesn't know shit about music to do this. And then they try doing a couple, Sid Vicious does a couple recordings.
He does a great version of My Way.
Yeah, man. We could play. Absolutely. We can play that.
Yeah. Play that. No, I'd say you have to play the beginning because it's so awful. Sounds like the Cowardly Lion. Did I get you on that one?
Yeah. He does. We're like, hey, you guys.
Didn't they want to make Sid the lead singer after
Yeah.
Johnny?
Yeah.
A life that's full each and every highway.
In this video, too, he's in a white, like a lounge jacket, and then he starts shooting everybody in the audience. And,
This is the end of Goodfellas.
yeah.
It comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, this part.
I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do. I saw it through.
It's a cool
Yeah.
song. I mean, it's,
I think if Sid didn't die and didn't kill Nancy, he could have been an Iggy Pop on his
maybe.
own.
Yeah, maybe they would have continued. I don't know. But, so we should probably talk about, Nancy and Nancy's end. So, we never know what happened, right? So they're staying at the Chelsea Hotel, which is like a shithole in New York. And, like Janis Joplin stayed there and a bunch of other people. And Sid Vicious just wakes up after getting all high and finds her dead in the bathroom. She's been stabbed in the stomach, and he has no recollection of what happened. But he was arrested and charged with her murder. He gets out on bail, and when he's out on bail, he dies of a heroin overdose, and he's 21 years old.
Yeah, did you see that footage of the interview of him? And they were like, "Where do you wish you were right now?" And he goes, "Underground."
Yeah.
And it wasn't very long after that he died.
Yeah. He says, like, I don't want to be a junkie forever. I don't even want to be a junkie right now.
Yeah.
And again, that's when I felt like pathetic. I was like, he's just pathetic. I don't have a lot of emotion for people that are heroin addicts. So
No, I mean, you choose your life.
right.
Dude, everybody could sit around and do drugs all day long.
Right.
But I become part of society. I go
Right.
out and I have my business.
I say this about Alice in Chains a lot. Like, Lane Stanley's heroin addiction is what made their music so dark, which is what made them such a great band. And Sid Vicious became so infamous partially because he didn't play the instrument, and he was carving himself up and was abusive and a shitbag, and the murder.
Yeah, fucking murderer. He was just a horrible person. Like, when he was on drugs, they said he was a very sweet, very nice guy underneath the junkie. I believe it was an accident. I think they were like fighting over drugs, or who knows, couples just fight. And he had it was a small knife. It wasn't like this butcher knife. It was
Right.
like this small knife, like a pocket knife. And it was only one incision. It wasn't like he stabbed her over and over and over again. It was like one poke in the right place, and she bled out. And they were he was probably holding it, and she ran into it. That's what I always thought. That's what I always thought. In the movie Sid and Nancy, I remember that's how they kind of explain it. Like, it wasn't Sid like killing her. He was like, "I'm going to cut you with this and everything," and she fucking comes running at him, and he just accidentally cuts.
Impales her.
Yeah.
Oh. I'll definitely have to watch that. Do you think
It's
that
great.
they would they be as popular? Like, had he never joined the band, would they be as like legendary as they are now?
I don't know, dude. I really don't know. I mean, like I said, Sid is the face of punk rock.
Yeah.
I
don't know either, man.
People
Like,
will say they started playing bass because of Sid Vicious. Yeah, man.
I don't know. I think they would have. I think they were on a they were doing enough shit and getting enough attention that they didn't need to add a heroin junkie to it to make it all go kablooey and flamed out. But the shortness of theh career is also part of the story.
How long did they last?
It was like 2.5 years. Their first go around.
Okay, their first gig to
right till they broke up. They reunited like in the 2000s and went on.
I wish I had a chance to go see that in New York City.
Yeah, I wish I did too.
I had to work that night. My buddy was like, "Oh, let's go. I have a ticket for you. Let's go." I regret to this day not going to that, dude.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, man. So they kind of, they kind of all go their separate ways. Even the impact that they had on other bands, and we talked about this in the punk episode, like the Buzzcocks, the guys in the Buzzcocks saw them and were like, holy shit, we're going to start a band. Joe Strummer saw them. It was blown away. The Damned started working for them. The guys in Joy Division saw them. Morrissey saw them in concert. And they were like, all these guys were like, I want to be in music after seeing these guys.
Because they were just a bunch of ordinary guys making music their own way.
Right. Anybody could do it.
Anybody could do it, dude. If you have passion, you can make music.
Sure.
If you just make a sound just like Steve Jones did. He didn't know what kind of chords he was playing.
Yeah.
He just knew he invented a sound for himself.
One thing that was interesting with Sid Vicious too was like everybody started dressing like him when he became a punk. So it was like the counterculture. I'm part of this movement that supports being an individual. We're all going to dress like we have a uniform now. We're all going to dress like this dude.
That was my
jacket.
That was my problem even in the 90s. Like if you were punk rock, you had to let everybody know.
Yeah, and I think that's Johnny Rotten's issue with it now. He's like, all these other bands that came after us, he's trashing the Green Days of the world and shit. He's like, they're all came after me and it's already been done.
But like Steve Jones to me is like the driving point of that band. Like we say, oh, if Sid didn't join the band, like what would have happened?
Yeah.
I mean, John, he would have took charge of it, and who knows what would have happened. Steve wanted to keep on going, but then he became a fucking junkie.
Steve Jones did?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Did you watch the end of that series?
Yeah, I did. I had it on while I was working. I had it playing in my on my laptop next to me.
I believe it was the end of the thing, of him trying heroin, and then it was like took over, kind of thing.
But and he still makes music. He's still around.
He's great, dude. He is punk rock. He is punk rock.
Yeah, and I've got some other shit that he did, man. So he was in a band called the Neurotic Outsiders with Matt Sorum and Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses and John Taylor from Duran Duran.
I was trying to figure out the name of that band. What were they called?
The Neurotic Outsiders. Billy Idol was in this band for a little while.
Yeah.
I've got something from him. I put some of here's a song called Nasty Ho. Okay, I was, I didn't hate it. I thought it was okay.
Duff McKagan, man. I think he was like the biggest influence on punk rock to me. He introduced a lot of punk rock to me.
Okay.
Duff McKagan. Even the songs that he does in Guns N' Roses, his bass lines.
Yeah.
He's very punk. And him working with Steve Jones was probably amazing because nobody was a bigger Sex Pistols guy than Duff McKagan.
Yeah.
And to this day, Duff wears the chain around his neck with the lock like Sid did.
Yeah.
Like he was carrying the flag for punk rock into mainstream.
He also did like a solo album that I never listened to, but it said like Axl was on it, Does It, Fire and Gasoline.
He had a few different. He had a few different ones. I had the original one, and it wasn't that good.
No.
What he did was he played every instrument on the album.
Okay.
So, I mean, him playing with other musicians that are like credible, that would be fucking awesome.
Yeah. He was in another band briefly called The Professionals that I listened to. I'll play a little bit. This is called Little Boys in Blue. I was kind of digging this. I was digging
I love Duff.
I like the guitar
Yeah.
work on that. It was cool. But
What was the name of that?
that was a band called The Professionals. Duff
It
wasn't
had-
in that one. It was like a whole other
Okay.
project that Steve Jones was in. But
Okay.
he bounced around, did a bunch of other shit. Glenn Matlock was in another band called The Rich Kids.
When the Sex Pistols got together for that reunion thing, Glenn Matlock came back and played bass
Yes.
for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to add that to the conversation.
And I guess the guy that had the biggest career outside of the Sex Pistols was Johnny Rotten and Pill, Public Image Limited.
Yeah, I remember them. I
never
remember
got
being
into
on.
them.
I just remember being on like 120 Minutes
Yeah.
on MTV.
It's
And
so
Johnny
different.
was like, first time I saw Johnny Rotten was like, who's this guy?
Yeah. He's so
Why is
fat.
his eyes? His eyes are like the craziest things.
Yeah.
He has this like condition that he's like the pep all the time. Like Ritalin wouldn't do shit for him probably. If you ever look at those pictures of him, his eyes are always wide open.
Wide open.
And
He's
they're
wired.
dilated. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's his natural look.
Okay. I got a song I put on the playlist too. Rise by Public Image Limited. It's so different sounding than a Sex Pistols song.
Could be wrong. I could right. Could be wrong.
Yeah, it doesn't really do anything for me, but
It's totally different for Johnny Rotten.
He's talking about going back on the road again with the band. Now that COVID's almost over. Whatever.
Wasn't it crazy in that Filth and Fury movie when they were they were only silhouetting interviewing Johnny
It
Rotten?
was weird. All of them.
But then he was like, you could see him crying, talking about Sid Vicious.
Yeah, he felt I don't know, he felt some regret of just bringing him into the band.
He probably, I don't know. Sid was such a junkie before he joined the Sex
Yeah.
Pistols. Who
Yeah.
knows what would have happened? He was just a famous junkie.
Did you ever listen to any of Malcolm McLaren's other stuff? Like he put out some solo albums.
No.
Okay, and there's a reason why you never have. And we can put this on the list for Electric Chair. This is really bad. So this is probably not what you're going to expect, but this is a song called Buffalo Gals.
Well, that scratching is making me itch.
That's the kind of shit that Malcolm McLaren was making. He made like
Wow.
hip hop, weird. I mean, I guess I kind of get it, right? Because he was like this weird avant garde kind of cutting edge. I'm doing shit differently, but I was like, that sucks. No
Oh,
good.
yeah. No good.
No good, man. Let's wipe that out of our tasters. Anything else? Any other songs off of Anarchy you want to?
Yeah, let's play Holiday in the Sun.
Oh yeah, of course. Here.
I don't want a holiday in the sun. I want to go to the New Bell Sun. I want to see some history. 'Cause now I got a reason about economy. Oh, now I got a reason. Now I got a reason. Now I got a reason. And I'm still waiting. Now I got a reason.
Another
Great
great song.
song.
Yeah.
Man, I remember the first time I heard Nevermind the Bollocks. It was my famous story of my first punk rock tape that my friend made me in high school. One side was the first Ramones album, and the second side was Nevermind the Bollocks.
Oh, right on.
And from right at the first beginning of it, I was like, "Whoa!" Like I knew who they were, but they really got my attention. I was a punk rock fan way before in high school, before Green Day came out. And when Green Day came out, I was like, "This is not punk rock."
No, I agree.
You know?
I'm not a fan of Green Day.
I like that American Idiot album. I think that's brilliant. But what they did for punk rock was made it mall, like the
Yeah.
mall.
Right, but what you just said with this, like this is a band that when you hear it, you're like, "Whoa, what is this?" Like
Yeah.
never. I know you're not a big fan of Nevermind, but a lot
No,
of people.
I am. I just
Okay.
didn't grow up worshiping it.
Just a lot of people our age heard that, and that was like, what is this? It's just so
Totally.
different. And this album was like the same thing, just way, like holy shit.
Yeah.
Maybe one last point on them too. So the 4 original guys and Sid, they get inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they famously refuse to.
And that's punk rock.
Yeah,
That's my definition of punk rock.
Yeah.
Not showing up for your own induction to.
they
Hall
call
of
the
Fame.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a piss stain, and they say we're not your monkey. They said, well, we're going to pay $25,000 for a table.
Now,
Good luck.
that is punk rock. I tried to explain it earlier. That's the definition of punk rock. What they did.
You know what else is also really punk rock? And it was it's at the end of the Filth and Fury, is the concert. The last concert they do in the UK is a charity gig for children.
Yeah, what a great moment.
Yeah, so they a group of firefighters and miners go on strike, and the band decides to do kind of a free show for their kids, and they come in with a big cake that says Sex Pistols on it, and they're handing the cake out. At one point, the band's they're shoving their faces in the cake, and they're
They
brought
with the kids.
Yeah, they brought T-shirts for the kids, and they judged a dance contest, and then they played. And
They played for them.
Yeah, they said they played, and the kids were singing along with all the vulgarity and all the bad language, and they're
But look what they were doing.
Right, they're the parents don't care.
You didn't see fucking Rod Stewart doing anything. You didn't see Mick Jagger fucking do anything.
Right.
But you got these scumbags, right? And everybody thinks they're scumbags, but they're the only ones that cared about those kids.
Right, and that's punk. Right, doing that.
That is fucking punk rock.
That's
dude.
punk as hell. Those guys coming in, we don't care. Even they said when they reunited, they offered to go over to Iraq, but they were we're not playing for the soldiers. We're going to play for the people in Iraq. We want to bring
I didn't hear that.
We want to bring some music to those people. Maybe they need some rock and roll. And it never, it never
That's
went
pretty
anywhere.
Ballsy. That's a ballsy statement, bro.
Yeah, I don't think that hardcore.
Well, they're not Americans, so,
right? But I also don't think hardcore Muslim fundamentalists are going to be down with the Sex Pistols. But anyway, but it was still still a shot. But the Christmas concert for the kids was really cool. There's a whole the BBC just did a documentary about that a couple of years ago. It's called Christmas with the Sex Pistols.
I have to look for
and it had a little. It's on YouTube.
That's my favorite moment of the Sex Pistols history was when they played for those kids.
They play with the kids, right? Because with the whole time
they said Sid was awesome with those kids all day long, and those kids came from the same street as they did.
Right, and we've been talking the whole 2 hours about drugs and stabbing and spitting on people and fights and all this other shit, and then just to bring it back that they did this kind of this really sweet thing for kids whose parents were out of work, over the holidays. Kind of they were on strike too, so they're kind of sticking up for working people, and that's what they were.
That's what they were. They hated the rich. They hated the phonies that watched the BBC all night. Those tea drinking, pinky out motherfuckers.
Yep. Yeah, really cool moment.
Let's hear another song from Nevermind the Bollocks.
Sure. What do you want?
How about Pretty Vacant? Great song.
Is that it on the Sex Pistols?
I don't know. I just hope every week I do. I really try to give these topics justice.
I thought you were fine, man. This is a really interesting story.
Yeah,
in rock and roll, and I love that most about doing the show is finding these stories, and
it's I can't tell you about punk rock. My heart can show you on the drums what punk rock is. But to explain it, punk rock's inside of you.
Sure.
Punk rock's inside of you. It's not the way that you dress. None of that shit. Punk rock lives inside of you.
Again, it's a really interesting story, but I love that just sitting on top of that in the way that they flamed out so fast and they didn't know what the hell they were doing was that they just made an awesome album.
Maybe Malcolm was the best thing for them and the worst thing for them. Would they have made it without Malcolm? Would they even met each other if it wasn't for Malcolm?
Probably not. Those two guys would have been tooling around. They would have stuck with Wally Nightingale and stealing guitars and probably not going anywhere. And like you said before, man, with the Ramones, like those four guys just were destined to be together, and they were in the right place at the right time. And that's kind of what these guys, like, you know,
the universe opens up and people find each other and magic happens.
Johnny Lydon doesn't walk into that store that day. It doesn't happen.
Yeah. Johnny Loudon was so shy to start singing. And imagine if he just like walked away. Never mind. And just walked away.
Or if he had brushed his fucking teeth a little bit more, maybe that wouldn't, or his hair wasn't green, or he had a different t-shirt on that day. You know, like all those little, moments.
I hate Pink Floyd t-shirt.
All that shit just kind of led to where it is. And that's like, he was just a dude who just happened to be in a store at a time and became a musician, and he's been doing it for 40 years now.
But I think Malcolm saw what he stood for, and he's like, I could manufacture that. I put that out. You know, fuck everybody. I could sell fuck everybody.
Yes.
That's what Malcolm's.
When Steve Jones said that Nancy Spungen just had this cloud over her, like Malcolm obviously saw something in Johnny Lydon, was like, this guy is what we need.
Yeah. I mean, he's the definition of what punk is. He, you know, read, if you want our listeners, go watch the Filth and the Fury on YouTube, or you can check out the miniseries that was on Hulu.
Yeah, it was on Disney Plus, and now it's on Hulu. It was on Disney Plus.
You're kidding me.
I swear to God. It was originally on Disney Plus, and now it's on Hulu.
That is fucking bizarre. Mickey Mouse put out the Pistol show. Oh.
Yep. And it's largely based on Steve Jones's book that he wrote.
Does he have a book?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to go. Have you ever read it?
I have it now. It's on my growing list of shit that I need to read.
I'm gonna put that on my list.
Yeah.
Steve Jones' book.
We do so much of this stuff, and I'm like, oh, I need to look into this, and I need to learn more about that, and then but it's also like, I got to move on to the next topic, and then we're very ambitious sometimes with some of the stuff we want to cover. Yeah, what I was saying, like we should do the songs that Led Zeppelin ripped off. I'm like,
I think that's an awesome idea.
That's probably going to be some work. I think it would be great. I think it'd be awesome. We'll play all kinds of shit that nobody's ever, like, we've never talked. Like, I would learn a lot. Like, kind of like the blues episode.
Oh yeah,
like,
I bet you could look up easily.
Sure,
what those songs are.
Right, but it's not something I could sit down and talk about off the top of my head. Right.
No.
But it's all. I think it would be an awesome topic.
I would love to do a jazz episode.
I would too. And it's another one that would require some work.
But that takes probably at least a month of research, or just to put it together. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, we got some work to do. Second thoughts. All right, I got two things on second thoughts. So first, I said in our Woodstock episode that the event happened during the Summer of Love, and it's not true. The Summer of Love was in '67. Woodstock was in '69. So to all of you who emailed me saying I don't know what I'm talking about, thanks for listening. I also have some info on the naked guy holding the sheep and who he was. I said my homework was I was going to find out who that was. I found it, but I'm going to save it for another episode because I want to get into this email that we got from our new friend Lucas in Florida. This is fucking awesome. So Lucas sent us an email and he said, "Hello, gents. I'm new to the podcast after a friend raved about the Big Four, Rush, and Electric Chair episodes, which I've been enjoying. At some point during the pandemic, me and some of my buddies did a worst songs of all time tournament, similar to the NCAA bracket. We made a list of about 50 to 100 songs, and then we drafted them to fill out the bracket of 64. We went through the whole bracket debating which songs were worse, and we'll move on to the next round. Since there were three of us, you had to have at least 2/3 of the votes to advance a song. Whoever was the lone vote would have a chance to try to convince one of the majority votes to switch. The bracket was rock focused and not broad as you guys did on the Electric Chair episode, but it was really fun, and I thought you might appreciate the idea and the outcome. The final four, Urgent by Foreigner, Higher by Creed, November Rain by Guns N' Roses, and The Sound of Silence by Disturbed, and Urgent by Foreigner beat November Rain in the final. Anyway, keep up the great work. I'll keep listening. P.S. The funniest part of the Rush episodes when you guys all pretty much came around on Rush, but then agreed at the ending that Yes still sucks. I don't know why, but that made me really laugh. So, and then he sent us the whole bracket. Huge shout out to Lucas, Ken, and Joe for sending this bracket. Dude, I wrote it back. I was like, dude, this is hysterical. Some of the songs, there's some songs on there that on the Field of 64 that we haven't gotten to yet. And there's some really bad. I think I sent it to you. There's some really bad songs.
Lucas, thanks for listening, brother.
Yeah, man. I mailed him some stickers. He said he'd be happy to put one on his beer fridge.
Yeah, man.
And you know what, man? The electric chair. Maybe we'll send Urgent by Foreigner. We'll let their pick be the one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, man, why don't we do that? So the
Right
electric chair. The electric chair is a segment every time where we kill a song. And in honor of Lucas, Ken, and Joe doing all that work of sending us that bracket, we're going to kill Urgent by Foreigner. Since that was the song that won their field of 64. I was like, oh, this is a good pick, man.
Yeah,
I've seen
totally.
Foreigner way more times than I
Really?
like, yeah.
I've never seen him.
I've only seen them, I saw him open for Whitesnake. I saw him open for Poison, I think.
Let me hear this. Yeah, I don't like them. I think I like Boston better. Oh, so lame.
This is the stuff that, Johnny Rotten was writing.
About.
Right. The shit that they were trash can, like Kansas and all this, crappy
He was
stuff.
right. He was right
So,
there.
in honor of those guys doing all this work and doing this awesome field of 64, we're going to kill this song.
We sentence you to death.
Right on, guys. Thanks again for sending that to us. The bracket was hilarious, dude. Some
Yeah.
of the songs that they had on there.
Very inventive, man. Very inventive, very imaginative.
There's a handful of songs that we already killed, and then there's a bunch of stuff that I was like, oh, shit, we didn't get that. We didn't get that. We didn't. And I don't want to start reading it because I actually want to. There's some really good ideas on here.
Cool.
Of some terrible songs. So,
Thanks for listening, guys.
yeah, man. Really, really cool. Right on.
Did you, before we go any further,
Yeah.
Bruce, I knew you were away on your Labor Day weekend, but did you catch any of the Taylor Hawkins concert?
I
by any
haven't,
chance?
and that was the music news that I have.
Okay,
I haven't watched it yet.
Okay.
Did you? I saw you guys.
I watched a little bit of it.
I saw you guys were playing the replay in the bar.
Yeah, I wasn't working that night, but let's talk about it.
Yeah, man. So about 75,000 people filled the legendary Wembley Stadium for a 6-hour concert to honor Foo Fighters drummer Taylor Hawkins. It was the first Foo Fighters performance since he died in March. And there's, the list of people that showed up. I don't want to run through the whole thing because we could do a whole friggin' episode
on it.
just on this and playing
The
all the
highlights.
clips and stuff. Yeah.
The little parts that I've seen, Wolfgang Van Halen ripped the fuck out of Hot for Teacher, dude. He came out and played his father to a T.
Yeah. And he's
And
never
then-
done that before. He's always not wanted. He's one
He never wanted to imitate his father.
Yeah.
He was just like, no, I'm not going to imitate my father, but he did it for them.
Yeah.
Hot for Teacher. It was fucking great. It was awesome. And the second very inspiring part of the show was when Taylor Hawkins' son came up and played that. What's that song called? You're My Hero.
My Hero. Yeah. Shane Hawkins played drums
He
with the Foo
fucking
Fighters.
killed it, man. It made me inspired to go out and tour again, man.
I read some of the other stuff like Dave Grohl's daughter, she's really talented too. I've seen her.
Oh, she sang
Last Goodbye by Jeff Buckley and Grace by Jeff. I really like Jeff Buckley. Brian Johnson and Lars Ulrich played together.
I missed a lot of it because I turned it off because it was all of Taylor Hawkins' first band. All his bands were playing. And then I turned it off to watch the Fish concert. And then all this awesome shit happened. So I missed majority of it.
It's all on YouTube, I'm sure.
Everything's blocked out already on it.
Oh,
I'm trying to get my buddy to download it for my hard drive for my TV.
Yeah, I'm sure we can find it. The really, really long list. Paul McCartney and Queen and Rush and the Pretenders, Stuart Copeland from the Police. It really, from what I was reading, man, it really reminded me of the Freddie Mercury tribute at Wembley and the energy that was around that. And we talked about Taylor Hawkins a little bit. We did a spot on the podcast The Itch, rock radio, where we just kind of talked a whole bunch of podcasts. They asked us all to kind of come together and record something on our thought on Taylor Hawkins. And man, we should reach out to the Blue Meanie and ask him if he wants to come on, maybe share his.
Yeah,
we do an episode on it.
Yeah, the Blue Meanie went to England and went to Wembley Stadium to see the concert. I haven't talked to him yet about it, but man, I would love. Did you hear what happened to him? What Ticketmaster did to him?
I put this on our social media page where they canceled. They're like, there's an irregularity with your tickets, and they just canceled them. Yeah. And he was really, it's like from the day they announced this, the professional wrestler, the Blue Meanie from WWE.
He's our friend. Yeah.
He's a friend of the show. He was like, from the day they announced this, he was like, we're going. And I remember him like bragging, like, "Holy shit, I got tickets!" And he was waiting in the long ass queue. And he said
proud.
and they just said like, "Sorry, you're out." And I put it on our Twitter, and I was like, "Does anybody else heard about this?" And a couple of the people were like, "Yeah, I know some." It happened to multiple people. He said he got his tickets reinstated.
Yeah.
He said they gave him a reason, but I didn't ask him what it was.
I'll get it out of him.
My thought
I'm
was
sure
like,
he fucking went nuts.
yeah, I'm sure
I would.
My thought would be they thought you were a scammer because you bought tickets from another country, but give you an explanation, like, but something went awry, and thankfully
I never heard Ticketmaster taking tickets back.
I hadn't either.
I hate them.
And not
I
even
hate
like
Ticketmaster.
Not even like, can you confirm it? Can you do that? It was just like, sorry, you're out.
Oh, they ever did that to me with anything, I'm on the phone. That person on the other end is going to get it. I want to talk about Wolfgang. Because the Blue Mean is a huge Van Halen fan.
Yes,
and I'm sure Brian teared up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure Dave Grohl was tearing up several times.
I think they were emotional mess through that whole night.
I'm sure
they probably all were so fucking exhausted the next day from crying all day and like rocking all day. I have to see the rest of it because I feel like I missed something. But they're doing it again, right?
Yeah, there's an LA show coming up in like a week or two, something like that.
Hopefully that will be on TV, on the YouTube also.
Yeah.
I'll have to see that.
And Dave Grohl played most of the 6 hours. He played with all these other bands. And,
like I said, I only caught the beginning of it when they were playing all Taylor Hawkins' original bands. That's the only part I caught. And I feel like I missed something.
I'll look around and see if I can find it too. And if I find it, man, I'll try to download it for you. I'll keep my eyes open.
Cool.
I'll get my investigative team on it. All right, man. So I think that is a wrap on episode 47. If you want some more Prisoners of Rock and Roll, you can follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Tell somebody about us. We love that you're here, and we love that your friends to be here. You can always reach out to us with a comment. You can email us at show@prisonersofrockandroll.com, or you can reach out to us through social media. We'd love to send you some stickers. We got a whole bunch of high quality vinyl decals we can send you with our logo on it. Our logo is pretty kick-ass and looks great on anything. As I said, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and you can also check us out online at prisonersofrockandroll.com. So this was fun, brother.
I loved it. I hope we gave it justice. Every week, I just hope we give justice to our listeners. Maybe we didn't bullshit our way through this, and then hopefully, it came out good.
Put a lot of work into it, and I think it shows. So,
yeah.
All right, guys, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Keep on rocking. Peace out.
I'm just a prisoner!